There is boldness in titling your game Yet Another Zombie Survivors. Sure, it's just a humorous acknowledgement of the fact that one of these gets thrown on the pile every week since the genre's urtext Vampire Survivors was released, but it's also the tongue-in-cheek invocation of a challenge, that this one is good enough to be worth your time and money despite that pile's existence, and that its name will be looked at as lighthearted fun and not an accurate assessment of its quality or genre impact. The good news for Yet Another Zombie Survivors is that I'm always in the mood for whatever we're calling these things, but I don't see myself folding this one particularly into my regular rotation of bullet heaven goodness. On the other side of 10 hours of surviving, split between its 3 available modes of regular, endless, and hardcore, I've got problems beyond a game just being in its content infancy. The obvious disclaimer is that this game is early access, and that's actually okay with me. I'm willing to evaluate these openly unfinished titles based on the foundations they provide for the games they may one day become. But Yet Another Zombie Survivors suffers from some structural boredom. The kind of thing that won't just passively be addressed by the developer making good on all these coming soon signs all over the UI. Because just the addition of maps and heroes would be insufficient in addressing a cardinal sin. The fact that the build pathing in Yet Another is antithetical to fun, decision making, and consequently replayability. And that's a shame because the game's first impression was so good. And let's start at that first impression, because Yet Another Zombie Survivors isn't a bad game in its totality. It's just got some great systems being wasted by a mid-run progression that's less dynamic than I'm used to. Those great systems start with a well-executed military theming, which doesn't sound like a system until you get your hands on it. What looks like just a unique aesthetic among its peers is also a mechanical distinction. The genre's typical regularly intervaled attacks are replaced with automatic weapons that have more obvious on and off periods thanks to the requirement of reloading. Until you've built up your team, it gives you identifiable moments of weakness you need to play around. Ebbs in contrast to the genre's usual flow that demands a second or two of defensive positioning from you in between the carnage. You start as one of 6 survivors, but the other 5 don't just idle on character select until your next run. They become active participants in your survival. Because the survivor you pick is solo only for the first minute of your run, with 2 additional slots alongside them waiting to be filled. There's no micromanagement required by picking up new squad mates. They just magnetize together, and you control the resulting Voltron with the same WASD movement as before. But their addition is vital because they aren't just another warm body to help you deal with the cold bodies. They also add their skills to your upgrade pool for that run. Outside of each survival, there is satisfying meta progression. Your cross-run, cross-mode team level is fed into by your prior runs, successful or otherwise. It's got a skill tree of your usual stat-driven damage increases and some more active powers, like additional rerolls and the ability to ban spells from the reward pool. But I think Yet Another Zombie Survival's most fundamental success is in its flow and its feel. That speaks a lot to its visceral sounds and visuals. Mechanically all you're doing is moving around, but some great blood spatter and gargling carcasses give weight to the death on the other end of your barrel. The current enemy pool is small, but it squeezes more variety from its size than you'd expect. There are hulking tanks with devastating charges, banshee summoners with their legion of insects, and the zombie stable of bloated, explosion-prone corpses whose blast radius you must avoid, all of which telegraphing their moves with readability amongst the horde. When you're dodging all those attacks, balancing the needs of offense and defense, and negotiating a path into power-ups despite the massive flesh that wants to stop you, it works! The game really sells this fantasy of a powerful squad surviving against all odds. So what's the problem? That fantasy isn't earned. Because the not-so-secret ingredient that makes all these other Survivor games tick is that the late-game power fantasy isn't something you just passively slide into, but actively work towards with upgrade decisions and smart build combos. The genre's core tenet of automated attacks wasn't some removal of skill, it was the transfer of skill, preventing you from outplaying with your fingers and instead demanding you outplay with your strategy, finding abilities that synergize and exponentially scale together. Yet Another Zombie Survivors is not a game that respects that. It comes down to a few different design decisions that aren't bad in a vacuum, but combine into this mushy ungame of a title. These dubious decisions are an upgrade pool split between the characters, expandable upgrade rerolling and banning capabilities, and too few/too boring neutral upgrade options. Tame as they may sound, these genre stables may be fine in other games, but don't make sense here for a few reasons. Reasons that result in you having too much autonomy over a supposedly roguelite style, and not enough incentive to ever deviate from winning strategies. Splitting the upgrade pool by character doesn't sound like a bad idea until you realize that both its current pool size and projected one, based on the UI at least, can't sustain that splitting. You load into the map with your selected character and you know almost with certainty what the next 3 options in your random skill select will be. There are only 5 or 6 different options per character total, so it's never a question of what you're going to go, just what order you're going to go it. That pool becomes diluted once you get additional survivors, but don't forget you control when those survivors fold into your squad. Just ignore the SOS for a bit and keep shooting, and you can supercharge your leader to a maxed out build incredibly fast. A build that has no decisions being made because your average run will ensure there's plenty of time to get every single power up anyway. Even when you do get those additional squad mates, you do so one at a time, and can almost perfectly curate what you want and when you want it thanks to the upgrade bans and generous rerolls. You can go into every match knowing exactly what upgrades you want and then just perfectly execute those upgrades because there's no variance. The one thing that might in principle cause you to pivot a build would be powerful neutral upgrades, but all Yet Another Zombie Survivors is willing to offer there is the occasional 10% boost to a stat. I'm not normally one to optimize the fun out of the games that I play, but what is this game, what is this genre without being a sort of build optimizing sandbox? Without any build based decisions to make, all you're doing is upgrading your spells one at a time. That means the only real choice you're making for the entire run is what squad mates you want, and even they can be re-rolled. You'll never need to push through with a non-ideal squad or make on-the-fly decisions to salvage a run gone wrong. It's so jarring that it almost feels intentional. Is the near-complete lack of randomness supposed to create distance from the slot machine origins of Vampire Survivors? If so, I'm going to need way more interesting builds to be willing to make that trade. Picking 3 guys, then trending the neutral upgrades towards bonus skill damage or bonus weapon damage just isn't cutting it for me. Because Yet Another Zombie Survivors is a game where experimentation isn't a requirement, but instead a self-imposed challenge. A game with a run-based roguelite structure, but you can literally just execute the same exact strategy over and over again. It's an idle game in Survivor's clothing, borrowing the passive gameplay without giving the decision-making satisfaction that passivity was clearing the floor for. Sure, its early access nature results in a game that's bare bones, but I think the most damning trait is that those bones aren't healthy. Before playing it, my biggest fear was that Yet Another Zombie Survivors would be accurately represented by its title. After playing it, I'm afraid it won't.